Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Stand Up Speakeasy. I am your host, Srethne, and every episode I bring a comic from all over the country and we talk about their comedy journey so far. And I'm so happy and excited to bring on to my next guest. Um, he's just, I love his interviews on YouTube. I'm like addicted to him. And ladies and gentlemen, coming to the stage from Hot Breath, Joel-Byars. Hey, Joel, how are you?
Woo woo! How we doing, Sareth? It's great to meet you, my friend.
Great to meet you, my friend. My friend, it's awesome. It's so rad I get to interview you. I've been like looking forward to this. Like, it's just pretty awesome. Like with all the guests that you had so far, and to the future, I'm looking forward to all of them. So.
Oh, thank you, Sareth. You said a lot of kind words about the podcast and how it's helped you, and that's the whole goal, man. Just to help comics, you know.
Absolutely, and we're doing great things for the comedy community, and it's just like, man, I'm finally connecting with folks that do the same and all that good stuff, and putting comedians on the map and all that good stuff.
That's the goal, man.
Indeed, absolutely. So, Joel, you're an award-winning comedian, podcaster, and trophy husband, and in the name of your comedy special, and so, what was the award that you won as a stand-up comic?
I'm sorry. I was playing with lighting. I was trying to get my lighting as good as yours over there. I'm sorry.
Okay. Indeed. Yeah, this whole webcam thing is pretty neat. It's like the Razor, and it's like the built-in ring light with the camera, and like it's like just full definition, like high definition. It's like $80 or $90 or something. But it's just really good deal.
That's awesome. I'm just so pale. I don't know what I get blown out or I don't enough. That's sufficient. I'm sorry. This is your show, Sareth. I'm so sorry. Please.
You're fine. Indeed. Awesome. But yeah, which award did you win as a comedian?
Oh, this was for my podcast where it won Best of Atlanta. We have like a yearly annual like voting in a publication here in Atlanta for Best of is what they call it. And it won Best Podcast. And my live show in Atlanta that I used to host pre-pandemic and all that, that won like Best of Atlanta local comedy show. So it was fun. I mean, you realize those kind of things don't really, it's a cool vanity metric, I guess, or something cool. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really move the needle or really provide much gratification beyond like, oh, that's cool. We're on the right track. But I've learned a lot of like the vanity goals of like, I have to get on late night or else, or well, how did so-and-so book such and such or whatever. It's just like all focusing on what you can control and just doing your best at that. And that's really where a lot of the momentum of my career and just the overall just gratification has come from those kind of moments beyond like some sort of vanity accomplishments along the way.
Indeed, most definitely. And it's always cool to be praised by your peers, but like the media is pretty neat too. Like, but like I prefer the peers, like, you know, the peers that are praising you more than anything.
Yeah, for like, sure. For sure.
Yeah. Indeed. But your podcast got, got an award with the paper and stuff. And if I could, I'm a journalist. I went to school for journalism, and if I could, I'd give you an award too, because your podcast is rad.
Thank you so much, Sareth. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome, indeed. And we have some viewers in the audience, so if you're in the like to join in on the chat, you're more than welcome to. But be nice to us and all that good stuff.
Be nice to us.
So awesome. And so you're also you're a trophy husband, and it's the name of your stand-up special. And I saw bits and pieces of it on YouTube. Where can we find the comedy special and all that good stuff?
Yeah, my comedy special is available on my website. So if you go to JoelByarsComedy.com, you can see the full comedy special in all its glory. And I went a different route. Myself, after 10 years in the game, I decided to self-produce my own special to show other comics that it can be done without having to get Netflix or without having to have all these extra bells and whistles. You can self-produce your own comedy special that is high quality and that people will want to watch. I saw a lot of comics giving away their specials for free on YouTube. And I'm always looking for, what can I do that's the opposite of the current trend? Always looking to create a new wave as opposed to riding a current wave. So I actually ended up selling it on my website by donation. People can pay what they want to watch it. But just to test the waters on if instead of giving it away, will people still pay for it? And they will. And we've actually been fortunate enough to make my money back since the release of the comedy special, which was the whole goal beyond inspiring comics to start creating their own projects. Was if I can break even on this, I'm thrilled. And we've been able to do that. So it's been very, very rewarding. So anyone listening or watching, go get it, and it'll be rewarding for you too.
Indeed. I'll definitely have to watch the whole thing because from what I've seen so far on like the YouTube clip, it's great stuff.
Thanks. Yeah, I've posted some clips on social media, and in the special, my dog makes a cameo. My wife makes a cameo. I forget my jokes at one point. Like I leave a lot of those kind of moments in because that's really what comedy is. You know, comedy isn't a sold out theater with a comedian doing, 5 recordings of a special to then stitch it together to be like, make every breath flawless. It's like comedy isn't pretty, as Steve Martin has said. And I wanted to show like the real unpretty side of comedy. And I mean, from what people have said, it's exactly what it does. So I'm excited.
Most definitely. Indeed. And I love the unpretty side of comedy. If you ever make it to Daytona Beach, that's as it's pretty as it gets. But there's something beautiful about that town, and that's why it's my home room and my home city. I love it.
Yeah, I haven't been down to Florida as much to do shows. I definitely want to. I know you guys are wide open right now. I may wait a little bit and let natural selection kick in first, but I'll definitely get back down there. There's a lot of hot brethren and sistren down there in Florida as well.
Indeed, most definitely. And you've also interviewed 300 comedians on Hot Breath. And how did you start interviewing comedians? Like, what are some of your favorite memories from those 300 interviews?
Oh my gosh. I mean, the show started with interviewing like comedian friends here in Atlanta who have since gone on to like, well, not all of them were my friends. I mean, it started out with Atlanta had 10 comics on Last Comic Standing in a season in the finals. And I was like, oh, let's interview them and be like a cool time capsule of the city. And like the moment in Atlanta comedy history. So I did that. And then from there, it grew into other interviews. But like, honestly, even in interviewing those 10 comics, like a funny moment with Rodman was he cut me off like 30 minutes in. He was like, oh, so how long did I allot this time? He's like, how long we doing here? And I had done like 5 interviews. I was like, whoa, oh, I didn't know this was an option where they just butt in and say, I'm done. And then we cut the interview right there. And that was a fun lesson in just valuing people's time. And even just having to like react in a moment of an interview. You know, you can have a game plan and a script, but like at any moment you've got to be able to pull an audible. So that was a fun memory there. But I don't really have a favorite interview. I mean, each one has had its own like dear place in my heart because I do like dive headfirst in these people. I'm like a private investigator with interviewing people. But like Carlos Miller, who I think you found that interview on YouTube, you said, right?
Yep.
The first time I interviewed him, like I came up with Carlos in Atlanta comedy, like he was hosting a show here in Atlanta and just killing. I have never been afraid to follow a host. Carlos Miller would murder, dude. Like in between comics, he would kill it. And you're just like, how is he doing that? What kind of superpower does he have? I mean, he's one of the funniest people on the planet for sure. But when I actually got to interview him the first time, I've had him on twice. I show up to his apartment and he lets me in, and then there's just 2 women sitting on the couch. And they're just sitting there like drinking and smoking. This was before I had video. Oh, this was before I had video, Sareth. Oh, there are some photos. They did take some photos. Maybe I'll put them on Patreon. I don't think they're safe for work though. But like, long story short, we're about to start the episode. I thought they were just hanging out. And then we're starting the interview, and he goes, oh, so should we? He's like, hey, Joel, should we pay them to get naked? And I was like, what? I'm all nervous. Like, this is Carlos Miller. I mean, we're like friends-ish, but it's still Carlos Miller. And I'm like, oh, no, what is he doing? And then apparently it turns out, they were strippers. And I was like, you can pay them, but I'm just here to do the interview. So like for that interview, there's just two strippers. There's just two strippers naked dancing around us the whole interview. And like he called it his Rick James moment is what he called it. But like that was a moment of like, whoa, because I was still early in interviewing. I was very scripted. Now there's smoke in the air. There's like two strippers I was not expecting. And then we're just doing an interview with Carlos Miller, who at the time I believed was going to be the star he is today. I was like, this guy's the next Martin Lawrence, without a doubt. So to be here in this moment with him and all this happening and all the distractions, it was like a whirlwind, but one of those unforgettable moments of like, oh, maybe we're doing something special here. You know, it could have been a little bit more special with video, but it probably would have got demonetized on YouTube anyway with what was going on. But dude, it was so wild. And like, there's been a lot of fun memories with like the podcast doing over 300 interviews with comics, you know, but, I mean, even Cedric the Entertainer, I confirmed that interview like 2 days before we were going to do it. So I had to dive headfirst into all this research with him. Like I was just everything Cedric the Entertainer, just research. And then I drove like an hour and a half to the theater he was performing at to then do the interview. I got there like an hour early. I'm sitting in my car going through the script, like just rehearsing. And it's just like every step of the way to then get to the moment with him. And I didn't have a light. That was the interview that taught me I needed to have a lighting system because otherwise the video quality suffers. And Lunella had told me that when I interviewed her, and I was like, yeah, I'll get to it. And then with Cedric, most people probably couldn't tell, but like the ISO on the camera was really high to let all the light in, so then the quality's grainy. It could have been better on that end, but that just makes it something to look forward to for the next time I get to interview him. So it's all been a lot of fun experiences along the way. And you know, from doing a podcast, Sareth, that it's good and bad. I've accidentally deleted episodes. I've had every technical difficulty you can imagine, you know, so that's part of podcasting though. And that's why it's a crazy stat that it's like 70% of podcasts don't have more than 10 episodes or something like that, just because of the work involved with it, you know? So it's a lot of positive and a lot of just good lessons learned along the way. But it's hearing and connecting with comics like you, Sareth, who recognize how helpful it is and really appreciate it. That makes it all worth it. Seriously.
Absolutely. And we have some guests in the audience, Bob, and if you'd like, you can read out all those comments. And so
Bob Kirk and PJ and Chris Grulon, we out here.
Absolutely. That's so cool. Welcome everyone. That's so awesome. Thanks for joining in the chat. And we wanted to give you all some praise while we're here. And Joel, when you talked about like Carlos Miller and the strippers and stuff, and it reminded me of like I conducted this interview in Jacksonville with these musicians from Europe called Dope DOD, and they were on tour with DJ Paul from 3-6 Mafia and Insane Clown Posse. And DJ Paul from 3-6 Mafia comes in and interrupts our interview, and so did Violent J, and it was like the most insane moment. I'm like, this is legendary. So I'll have to send you that link. It's just bonkers, like 17 minutes of wildness.
That's so cool, man. Yeah, those are the moments that like keep it worth it. You know, it's kind of like in stand-up, a lot of stand-up is like open mics. Am I doing this again? Why am I here? I have to be up for work tomorrow. And then you have those shows that kill, or those unforgettable moments that you're like, oh, that's why I do it, you know? So that's a cool moment.
Absolutely. Those are some memorable ones. And I love stand-up. And, you know, I started off as a concert journalist, and so that's how I got that, you know, interview with the Dope DOD guys. And,
nice.
But, yeah, they paid me to go to concerts. It was like the best dream job in LA ever. So it was rad.
Awesome.
But that happened in Jacksonville, but I carried it all the way from coast to coast. But you were also a writer for Comedy Central, and how did you land that gig?
That was a referral, and something that I think what I've learned from doing so many interviews and doing comedy 11 years now is a lot of your work is going to come from other comics. A lot of your opportunities are going to come from your peers in this game. You never know. That's why it's always important just to be nice and be funny, because you never know at year 2, someone who's running an open mic. Year 5, they may be running the best show in your region that pays and they want to book you or something like that. You just never know who anyone is going to be. So you just be nice and be funny. So for Comedy Central, this was the first season they were doing Roast Battle, and they were going to have it up at JFL. Miss Pat was on Roast Battle that year, and she wanted me to help with writing her jokes. So I actually got to go up to JFL and write roast jokes for Roast Battle and just be a part of the JFL festival, which was like the Super Bowl of comedy. I mean, it was incredible, and such a credible opportunity that came from just like meeting, like Miss Pat did my podcast. First off, she was one of the first 10 people, actually. I didn't know her at the time, but I knew she was from Atlanta and on Last Comic Standing. So I ended up getting to book her through reaching out through her management and things like that. But we hit it off there. We liked each other. We kept in touch. I did some shows with her here when she would come through Atlanta. And then when she got that opportunity, she called me to help her with it. And that's just one of those things. Yeah, it's just being nice and being funny and letting the work come from that. And it's a long road, and it requires just patience and being consistent, and just focusing on what you can control. But that's one of those moments again where I'm standing in the green room of Roast Battle at JFL, and there's John Mulaney talking to Judd Apatow right there. And it's like, oh, Brian Regan just walked by. I mean, it's like, but it was reassuring to like be in that environment and not be like scared or not be uncomfortable. It was like a real validating moment of like, oh, I deserve to be here. I'm in this room for a reason. Like, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? You're just like, oh, okay, cool. And I think there's a lot of those moments of like in your career where sometimes you may not feel like you're ready or whatever, but rising to the occasion, that moment just raises the watermark for your career. So going to JFL, being comfortable in those situations, getting every night at JFL, there's like a different themed party. There's like a Netflix party. There was one party, Russell Peters was DJing at the party. You're just like, where am I? But getting to be in that environment really showed the possibilities of comedy and just that, yeah, I deserve to have these opportunities as well. And everyone watching this deserves to have those opportunities as well. So that was really reassuring that like, oh, if I can be here, then like, anyone can do it. It just requires putting in the work, letting your network do the work. And for me, that was the moment I got to, yeah. I mean, I haven't reflected on it in a while, Sareth, and it was Sareth.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I just saw Imri pop up saying, tell Sareth I said hi, but then I saw I'm Ree, and I know his name's Ree, and then I was like, wait, is it Sareth or Sareth? But yeah, I hadn't reflected on that in a while. But yeah, that was a cool memory and a cool moment for sure.
Absolutely. When you said be nice and be funny, it's so true. It's like I'm like the funny, like one of the fun. Well, I tried my best to be funny, but I'm like one of the nice guys here in Florida.
Yeah.
But I've met a lot of mean folks. But it's the comedy game. Like my buddy in Colorado said, you're either a comedian because you're either egotistical or depressed. And I'm like, you're so right in all this, and and it still rings true. And Miss Pat was amazing on the Joe Rogan Experience. I mean, when she had him rolling, that was fantastic. And when you spoke of JFL, it reminded me of NAMM that happens in like Anaheim and in Tennessee, and where you see like all these famous comedians walk by. And for that, when I was like a concert journalist out in LA, there was like famous musicians walking by. I'm like DJ Quick and Mike Shinoda from Linkin Park, and just like Kerry King and just random musicians from different genres. I'm like, this is so rad, and it just reminds me of comedians of different styles. It's like you can be really clean and dirty, but you're still gonna see them in JFL, so it's pretty rad.
Yep. And you realize they're all just people as well. You're like, oh, they stand and they breathe and they walk. Like, I mean, they're people like everyone else at the end of the day. That really humanizes them when you see someone in real life like that.
Indeed, most definitely. And it's pretty neat that PJ was like saying networkation, and then it's so true. Like, network is your net worth, and you got to be cool with everybody and be funny. Like you said, it's like just be cool.
That's the game.
Yep, and Emery's so rad. Like I perform stand up with him and all the time in Jacksonville, and he has like the darkest sense of humor, like jokes, and I'm like, I love this so much. It's so great. Thank you so much. It's so awesome. And so you also written for the Weather Channel, and how did you land that gig?
Yeah, that's another network thing. I mean, that's another networking thing. And that really came from just performing and people from Weather Channel seeing me. There's a comedy club here in Atlanta called the Laughing Skull. And people from the Weather Channel came to a show and I guess liked me and then asked me like, so I wrote and I did like segments for them as well. They had a show called Weather Gone Viral where I would just like respond to different weather clips, like viral weather clips. It was just like me reacting to them basically. And that just came from being funny on stage and people liking my work and my writing. And there was a few, I think they had like 5 or 6 Atlanta comics they ended up booking to do that show. So, I mean, it was a lot of fun and a cool experience of like, you're going into Weather Channel and then like, oh, you're in front of a green screen and there's people lighting and doing makeup. And you're like, oh, I'm here. I made it, you know, and then having people who are up late at night and they see that show on and they're like, hey, I know you. And they like text you and things like that. And it's just, it all comes back to, just being funny at the end, like being funny on stage. And that's why you should never phone in a set. Like if it's 5 people, perform like it's 500. You just never know who's in the audience. Same Tyler Perry. I think before he popped, he was like living in his car and he did this run of theater shows that completely failed. Like no one showed up to them. But one of the people that showed up was the person that funded like his next run of shows or something like that. So it's like, yeah, it's seemingly a disappointment. He like lost everything, but then the one person he needed in the audience was there. Then the rest is history. So the same thing with stand-up. You just never know who's in the audience. So you perform every single time. Don't phone it in. Don't just roast the show because no one's there. Like you still go up, you still perform and give it your all every single time because you just never know who's in the audience. And I've had several opportunities where I just perform on stage and then get off and someone's like, hey, would you be interested in doing X, Y, and Z project? And it just comes down to just being funny, you know?
Absolutely. And that's so true what you just said, like with either performing in front of 5 people, treat them the same way that you're performing in front of 500.
Yep.
And with the current state of stand-up now, like in Florida and Daytona Beach, my homeroom, there's only like 4 people up there. And like I always ask to just close the mic out at midnight. And there's like 4 people left. There's no more hecklers. And they're like focused on the comedy. They're for the funny. And it's like, but their laughs carry to the front. And I'm like, it just reminded me of like performing at the Relapse there when I went on tour that. And it was so the complete opposite where it's standing room only. And I just was like, the laughs were so much that it pushed me back a couple times on stage. And I've never had that feeling before. It was so rad. I
Relapse.
I miss Relapse so much.
Relapse is my favorite. I got so weird at Relapse. I would just get very weird in there. It was like in the basement of this church. They used to do an open mic in the upstairs. It was called like the No Mic Open Mic, where there wasn't a microphone. It was just comics in like an attic just yelling at each other. But then down in the basement doing all the different shows they did and getting to see so many different great comics there as well. I saw like Pete Holmes perform there and Roy Scovel. And I probably would have filmed my special there. I ended up filming my special at the Basement Theater in Atlanta, which was the first place that ever booked me as a headliner. So it has a lot of sentimental value. But Relapse is where I really like put in a lot of reps, got a lot of weirdness out, and just rubbing the walls. And like I went to some weird places for a while. I would roll around on the floor. It was like in Atlanta, there's people that know me as like rubbing the wall, Joel, or like me on the other side of it. It's like AD and BC. But those early days, like if a joke didn't work for me, if like my opening breath didn't get a laugh, I'd be like, well, I guess this set's over. I guess I'll just quit. And then I just like grab the mic and walk to the back of the room and just like rub the wall and just be like, all right, I guess I'm done now. I'll just rub this. And then that turned into a bit where I'd be like, I call this bit ecstasy. And then like, so I started to make tags off of rubbing the wall. And I mean, but it's important to have spaces like that to get weird, to experiment, to get out of your comfort zone, get out of the rut of open mic. Here's my opener. Here's my middle. Here's my closer. Open mic. here's my middle, here's my opener, and you can kind of get into a rut. So it's really important to keep shaking it up however you can. I did shows on sidewalks. I did like music open mics. I did perform on public buses, like spoken word shows. Like I would perform other places outside of comedy as well, just to get out of my comfort zone and force myself to adapt in the moment, you know. And that's why I don't like taking my notes on stage either, is because it takes you out of the moment. It takes the audience out of the moment. And now there's a crutch. But those moments, especially early on in your career, those moments when you do forget your joke and you're like, oh, what now? What next? Those are the moments you become a comedian. It's not the, okay, what's next? And then, and then you're just like going back and forth. It just drives me nuts. It's like, those are the moments you become a comedian, when you're on stage and you have to survive and you flail. And sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes you rise to the occasion, but you get stronger every single time you survive those moments, which you always survive. You always survive a bomb. Like it's part of the process, my friends. But not having notes on stage, it just brings something else out of you. It forces you to prepare more before the show. And it just forces you to be in the moment on stage, which is what's super important, and be more natural and authentic. And that authenticity comes from you forgetting your script and you having to react in the moment and see what you can make of it. And as you keep talking, the jokes come back. Just keep talking and you will remember your jokes. But if you're doing this and looking down and this, it's like, come on, come on. Now on Zoom shows, I may have my jokes in front of me. Zoom. If we're just throwing stuff against the wall, like in Hot Breath, we do like feedback mics where you'll perform and then get feedback on it. So for those, I'll have notes on my screen because these are a lot of brand new thoughts and ideas I haven't even like worked out. But in an open mic in real life, like I'm all about no notes, just be in the moment, do what you can do to survive.
Absolutely. I'm the same way as you. Like I don't bring any notes, and I don't even write down my jokes or anything. And I just go up there and write on stage, as they say. And it's already stored in my head. I'm just going to unleash it and see what happens.
Yeah. Everyone has a different process. Yeah.
Indeed, most definitely. And speaking of writing, you've written your own book called Finding Your Funny, and it's pretty awesome. And where can they find Finding Your Funny? And how did what inspired you to write a book?
Well, I taught classes here in Atlanta, and one of my students was a professor, and he came up to me before a class, and he's like, this class is a book. And he's like, we're writing a book. And I was like, okay. And then he had a binder that he had already started to brainstorm ideas and how to organize it. So he worked with me to basically distill my 8-week course into this like book you could carry around from show to show. So it all started from him liking the class, finding extreme value in it. And then now it's like a book. I'm actually out of copies, but what I do have is I just started this comedian incubator group called Hot Breath Pro, where I put all of my classes, all of my workshops, all of my resources into this incubator. So now anyone who's aspiring to become a professional comic, it's a supportive community to where people can join, learn all the tools they need to level up their comedy, and the network side, getting access to the network that's going to help you become a professional comedian faster. Because be nice, be funny. The be funny is the education side. The be nice is the network side. So I wanted to just put everything I wish existed and would have saved me a lot of heartache and headaches trying to figure out this comedy game for 11 years. I just wanted to put it all in one place for comics to just become professionals as quick as possible. So that's been very rewarding. And it's been a process from me teaching classes in person, writing the book, doing the podcast. It's all been culminating into this comedian incubator that now we're already seeing people taking the leap into, becoming full-time comics, producing their own live shows, producing their own podcasts, all because of the opportunities in that community.
Indeed, most definitely. And man, that's so awesome. You're paying your knowledge forward and to some comics that are up and coming and some new ones. And that's pretty awesome of you. I'm only like 7 years in, or 5 years consistently. So I'm totally going to need some knowledge from you. And Yeah, and there's some new comments that are just rolling in right now, and it's pretty awesome. Like PJ and I can't pronounce the next one, but you can go ahead and read them if you'd like. I
Great.
think, yep.
Yeah, I love that too. Chica. Oh, you're gonna let me butcher the name. I see what you're doing there. But that's but yeah, that I mean they bring up a good point with like Roy Scovel takes his notes and weaves them into his act. Yeah, that's the cool thing about comedy is there is no like one way to do it. Like Dion Cole on his comedy special, I think had notes and he just pulled them out and was reading them as part of his bit. Yeah. Yeah, there's no like one way to do this game. For me personally, the preference was I don't want to take my notes on stage, but dude, I mean, it's a single player game. I mean, if you want to, go for it. I don't tell anyone. I've never been like, you're doing this wrong or whatnot. Like it's the great part about comedy is it's whatever you want it to be. It's whatever you want it to be. That is your moment in the day to where you can make that show whatever you want it to be. It just has to be funny. Don't forget the funny part, kids. It has to be funny. You can have awesome commentary. Yes, you can have a message, but it better be funny or it's just awkward spoken word. It's got to be funny. Regardless of what you do, it has to be funny, funny, funny. Do whatever you want. It's just got to be funny. It's got to make an audience laugh. Otherwise, it's just awkward spoken word. So a lot of young comics overlook that of like, and I did this too. I want to have a message and I want to talk about things. But it's like, oh, maybe I should figure out how to make my dog funny before I tackle climate change. You know what I mean? So it's just one step at a time. It's a lifelong pursuit. As Don Rickles said, comics don't retire, they die. So there's plenty of time to get to those messages. And if you want to start tackling them now, go for it. I'm just telling you in my experience, I tried that, realized, let me focus on how to make anything funny first, and then I can use those skills and tools and templates to then make more controversial things funny. I just, biting the elephant one bite at a time. But yeah, whatever works for you, go for it, my friends. Let her rip.
Indeed. I've seen comics use like tiny little papers and it remind me like of the fortune cookie papers and some of them write in their hands and they look at it and I'm like, go for it. It's like pretend you're in school and cheating on your test. That's totally
whatever
fine.
You want. Yeah.
And it's so true what you said about Don Rickles, like comics don't retire, they just die. And like I have this ongoing joke every year that I'm retiring every year and it would make people mad.
But it's just you dying on stage.
Yeah. And I did that I went on air on the radio and I promoted my first shot, the Orlando Improv that I produced and booked. And all of a sudden we were only expecting like 70 people. Like the headliner expected like 60. I had like 20 or something, or we had 80 people planned. But after I got off the radio, like 280 people ended up showing up and I'm like, holy crap, they actually think I'm retiring. So it's just putting cheeks in seats, So.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah, so that's good stuff. And so your podcast was described as by NPR as discovering the desire to be a comedian, their craft, and the unifying bond found within the world of stand-up comedy. And I'm a fan of NPR because I love the Moth, and I had a storytelling room at the time. What was it like being praised by NPR?
Yeah, that was, I would say, what we call in the industry a finesse. Is what we would call that. So what I did was I did StoryCorps. I did NPR StoryCorps, and there on the website there was a quote about my StoryCorps, and it just and it had that quote. It's not like they did like a big review of the podcast and are like, "This is it. This is the next great comedy podcast," which it is. Which it is.
It is.
It is. But they ain't gonna know till it's too late, Like by the time people are like, "Oh, hot breath," it's like, yeah, you're too late. Yeah, we're charging a tax. We call that an aggravation tax in this game. For any bookers that didn't book you or clubs that didn't book you, when you've got the clout, those clubs get an aggravation tax. So for everyone that's not in it right now, Sareth, they're getting that aggravation tax. All right. So I just want to point that out that that we know that all of us know watching this. But by the time other people know, it's going to be too late and they're going to have to be paying double, But anyway, I digress. I'll get off my high horse as I talk about focus on what you can control, kids. Why don't more people love me? So anyway, So what they did is they had that little quote underneath the StoryCorps thing. So I just kind of used that as like, oh, look what NPR said about hot breath. It's kind of like early in your career when you do like an open mic and like Ron White drops by, and then on your bio it's like shared the stage with Ron White, and like I would like all young comics will do those kind of things, just for the sake of like just having a name on their bio. But so NPR did say that. It was connected to my StoryCorps though, and not like some big write up they did about me, if I'm going to be completely transparent with you there. But it was still cool.
Indeed, most definitely. And we talked about like having like my peers like praising me, and so like whenever they like tag me in their status updates, I screenshot it and I put it on my press kit. I'm like, look, it did happen. It existed.
Yeah, exactly.
It's nowhere near NPR, but I'm like, I'm just happy with my peers. But PJ jumped in with some more comments because you can only let yourself down as long as you're funny. And Joel was described by NPR with a lot of question marks, and he was, and it was pretty awesome.
Dabbing on them out here. Yeah.
Absolutely, indeed. So yeah, so it's pretty cool that your stand-up can be applied to like all ages. And how did you discover your voice from like being able to adapt to all sorts of situations and age groups?
It was always a goal of mine. It was basically like starting out, I always set the standard that I want to be able to perform in front of like grandkids to grandparents. Like I set that standard for myself. So in material I created, in shows I did and things like that, if material worked, but it wasn't falling within that, basically that structure, then I would end up getting rid of it. Now I did some whack jokes and I did some dirty jokes and I did some things that were just silly for the sake of misdirects. Like had a line about hookers with Groupons. And like she said she just needed help paying the bills, so I bought her stamps and envelopes. Like, and that's not even really dirty actually, but it's just like silliness for the sake of joke structure. But I always had that standard for myself that I want to be able to entertain everyone. Like comedy for everyone is what I really want to do. So even in Atlanta, I came up where I was known as White Boy Joel. Like I was never on cool shows. I didn't get the hipster rooms or whatever, these cool showcases with the fancy flyers. I was just on stage. I was just like, how can I get funny as quickly as possible? And it was stage time. And a lot of that was me doing shady hood rooms where I was the only white guy in the zip code. And if I had material that worked there that didn't work in front of like all white people, then I would get rid of it. And vice versa. If I had jokes that worked in one room but not another, I would get rid of it. I just wanted to make sure that I could mold my material to really like entertain as many people as possible. So that became my goal. And now my vision is to start doing like afternoon shows. Like I'll know I made it when I'm doing like a 2 p.m. and a 4 p.m. show. And I'm not out till midnight entertaining drunk people on the weekend. Like I want to be doing afternoon shows. That's where I'm at in my head. But it all started with just setting that standard. My favorite comic growing up was Sinbad. Sinbad could entertain everyone, and he kills as hard as anyone. So that was the standard I set for myself, and I've just worked to uphold it throughout my career. But I'm not saying that's the right way. If you want to be dirty, go for it, my friends. All I can say is that I have been able to, from the business side, I have been able to perform on more shows just based on being a clean comic. I performed at birthday parties and like baby showers and like corporate like potlucks and things like that, all because I'm clean and I can just entertain people, and they're not gonna feel like anxiety of if someone books this comic, oh no, or they're gonna come back on me as either they bomb or they're dirty or say something that maybe doesn't reflect the company values. So, I mean, there is value to having clean material. Even Mark Norman said when he was opening for Seinfeld, he had to be clean. And he was like, oh, I wish I had more clean material. He's like, I had to go back through all my albums and like scrape together whatever clean material I had to get that set together to perform for Seinfeld. So even Mark Norman, when the last Q&A we did with him, when we were talking about clean and dirty comedy, he was like, my advice is to be clean if you can, because there's just more work and it makes your life easier. And this is coming from one of the most popular like comedians in the game right now saying that. But I don't, if you want to be dirty, I don't like, it's funny. It's just gotta be funny. It's just gotta be funny. You could be up there swearing and dirtying it up all you want if it's funny. But if it ain't funny and you're just being dirty, that ain't gonna fly. So just be funny. I don't judge people if they want to go up there and cuss and all that. Go for it. Just be funny. That's it.
Absolutely. And I'm in the dirty phase of my comedy journey right now. And
yeah.
But like my buddy Kevin in Daytona, he goes, Sarath, you don't say any curse words, but you're really dirty on stage. And so you're like the cleanest, dirtiest comic in Daytona Beach. And I'm like, that's beautiful. I'll take that.
What a compliment. Yeah.
Indeed. Absolutely. So Joel, I was hoping to go on tour and interview comics. And these are the questions I asked every comedian that I've interviewed. And that's a lot. If you check out my channel. And so with that being said, Joel, what inspired you to perform stand-up comedy?
I was about to graduate from college, and it was about 2 months before graduation. And I was like, well, I've always thought about doing comedy. I'm about to graduate. What am I going to do with this liberal arts business degree? It might as well just be like an unemployment letter is basically what that would be. And I was like, well, let me give it a shot. So a local comedy club does an open mic. I go and try it basically because I have nothing to lose because Sally Mae took it all. And as soon as I did it, like that was it for me. Like it was almost like taking the blue pill. Like as soon as I did stand up, I was like, oh, this is my life now. Now everything I do is in service of becoming a professional comic. As soon as I did it, that was it. I'd always been a comedy fan. I loved comedy, but I didn't actually decide to do it until that senior year of college. And then it's been my life ever since.
Most definitely. And what was it feeling like when you first performed stand-up?
Oh my gosh. There was probably like 8 people in the audience. 5 of them were the staff. But I don't remember killing. I just remember people politely smiling. Like, I just remember, it was so bizarre. I just remember people like looking at me smiling. And you're just up there and you're just like, what is this? Like, it's kind of an out of body experience, but it was just the most gnarly, rewarding, energizing experience. Like you get high from it. You definitely get a high from doing stand up. And I've been riding that wave ever since, chasing that dragon, more like it. I've been chasing that dragon ever since. But it really was just like a small open mic. Actual audience members, though, were in there. Small open mic and people just politely smiling at me. And I was just like, yeah, I could do this. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we spoke of a lot of like famous comedians, like from Miss Pat to Mark Norman or Mark Maron, I'm sorry, and a bunch of others that you interviewed. So with that being said, a lot of those have comedy specials, such as yourself, and comedy records. What are your favorite comedy specials and comedy records other than your own?
Ooh, man. Sinbad's Afros and Bell Bottoms was the one. That was the first one I ever saw live. Not live. I mean, like on TV live, not like in person live. I haven't seen Sinbad live, but I will. He was going to do the podcast and he had a stroke. So, I think he's recovering, slowly but steadily. So I think he's going to be all right. But, Afros and Bell Bottoms, just seeing how much fun he was having on stage, how natural he was, and just, it was wild. The backdrop and his clothes, he's in like a jumpsuit. He had earrings. Like, it was just a wild experience. Mark Lowry, 20 Story Talls. I just had him on the podcast. He's the first comedian I ever heard. I heard his album. Incredibly funny. He's more of like, I guess, he doesn't even call himself a comedian. He calls himself a storyteller. And he's a big like musician, especially in like the Christian world. Christian music, he's very well known, but he's one of the funniest people on the planet. His album, 20 Stories Tall, is an incredible example of how you turn everyday experiences into hilarious jokes. So that's a great album for storytelling. I remember Kevin James Sweat the Small Stuff. I remember watching that in middle school and just crying, laughing, and coming to school the next day and talking with Lee Van Wilder about it, who beat me for funniest 7th grade. Not that I'm bitter, but he beat me for funniest. But we were talking with him about that special. Mitch Hedberg. I would carpool on the way to school in high school before I could drive, and the guy I rode with had Mitch Hedberg albums and Dane Cook albums. So we're listening to like the two polar opposites of comedy basically on a daily basis. So I got to learn a lot from listening to both of those. Harmful if Swallowed was the Dane Cook one. Anything Steve Martin. Steve is my favorite. Steve just sorry, I'm looking at my wall over. I have like albums on my wall. But Steve Martin is the one. He just did it his own way, and he was the first comic to really start selling out theaters and arenas. Like, he really took not only the art of comedy, he pushed it light years forward, but he took the business side as well. He was the first person to be on that arena level and to really show what's possible in comedy. And so Steve Martin will always be my favorite. But there's a lot of good comedy out there. Yeah.
Indeed. Daniel's favorite is John Pinette's Show Me the Buffet. So I've never seen it, but I guess sure.
I haven't either. Yeah, I've heard of John Pinette. I've honestly never jumped into his material though. But everyone that like I've heard praises him.
Most
but I haven't really listened to him.
Indeed. And a lot of those folks have been on TV and film, and I want to know what your favorite sitcom, sketch shows, and comedy films are.
Chappelle's Show is pretty undefeated when it comes to like a sketch show. Chappelle's Show is very undefeated. Mr. Show is another great sketch show. Sitcom. I don't really watch many sitcoms, to be honest. I haven't really watched. I can't even think of a sitcom, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. What was your favorite? What was your sitcom?
My favorite sitcom of all time is Martin.
Martin.
Okay. Just the way, like, Shanae and like, just all those characters, just fantastic. And like, my last name is Nay, so when I was in middle school, they would call me Shanae, and I'm like,
hilarious.
Indeed. Awesome stuff.
Think of a sitcom. Like, my mind goes to Saved by the Bell. I don't even think that's a sitcom, but I was all about TJIF as well. Yeah, I don't know any sitcoms. Did you say movies also?
Yep.
Caddyshack. Old School was the movie I saw freshman year of high school that like blew my mind for like what's possible within film and comedy, and just belligerently funny. This is a good one now. There's a movie called Top Secret. Have you seen this?
I have heard of it, but I've never seen it.
It may be comedy's best kept secret. It is one of the most belligerent, just funny, silly movies I've ever seen. I've cried laughing at this movie so many times. That's probably the most underrated movie in history. And I'm saying it right here. But that Top Secret, definitely a movie every comic should see.
Absolutely.
There's so many. Yeah, I feel embarrassed I couldn't think of a sitcom, but I don't really watch many.
Well, TGIF counts too, because like Step by Step and Family Matters and all those Perfect Strangers, they were all fantastic, Boy
Meets World.
Yeah. Oh man, Topanga and all those guys, they're just fantastic.
Yeah.
And like you were speaking of Caddyshack, and if you ever make the drive to St. Augustine, Bill Murray's the Murray Brothers Caddyshack, there's a restaurant that's in there. It's like right after Jacksonville.
Whoa.
Like there's gophers everywhere. There's movie memorabilia everywhere. It's fantastic.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
And I love Bill Murray and Coffee and Cigarettes when he was interacting with the RZA and the Jizza from the Wu-Tang Clan, because I'm a Wu-Tang fan, and it was just such an awesome thing with Bill Murray.
That's so cool. He's one of the best, man.
Absolutely. And if you can go on tour with any comedian locally and internationally known, which comedians would you like to go on tour with?
Sinbad. I would love to tour with Sinbad for sure. Sinbad is just like the pinnacle. He's the ultimate for me. He's just undefeated as far as I'm concerned. Steve Martin, honestly, like if we're going to talk about that level, but honestly, like I want to do like a Hot Breath tour. I want to tour with members of the Hot Breathiverse, and really like start to build that brand and be like a comedy festival and really start to expand and create opportunities for comics, and I want to go on tour with people within Hot Breath as well. I won't say any names, but if they're watching, they may be on the short list, but yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm at a point now where I just want to like create a platform that helps as many comics as possible, so part of that is us doing shows together, producing shows, producing comedy specials, producing comedy albums, like really just creating opportunities for comics. So I see that in the foreseeable future when like we can do more live shows, that we will be going on tour together and things like that.
Absolutely. And since Emery's the only one that I know that's in the comment section, I highly vouch for him when this whole festival and tour happens. So he's
Nice.
good. He's a good fella. And let's see here. If you can get roasted by 5 comedians, past and present, which comedians would you like to get roasted by?
Oh, for sure. Jeff Ross, Greg Giraldo, Patrice O'Neill, Don Rickles. Oh, I gotta pick one more. Man, maybe it's tough to pick one more because there's so many great roasters. I would say Lisa Lampanelli. She's pretty ruthless. So maybe though, if you're gonna put me on the spot with 5, yeah, I think those would be it.
Absolutely. And PJ and Bob and Emery and they all want to go on tour with you.
That's great. Yeah, Emery actually created for members of Hot Breath Pro, he created like our own like Google map because there's comedians in there from around the world. So like every member now has like their own blip on this map. So we can start to see where everyone is and we can start to like book each other and travel to see each other and things like that.
Absolutely. Daniel jumped in and PJ did too, so that's pretty awesome. They love you on here.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for watching, guys.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us. It's fantastic. And Joel, where do you see your comedy journey in the next 5 years?
The comedy journey?
Yep, yours.
Yeah, I see within 5 years I'll definitely be doing those afternoon shows, like the 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. shows. Definitely have my own special, but I like another, at least one more in 5 years. Yeah, I'm working on the second one now, but really I see Hot Breath becoming like a comedy hub. Like I see us having our own podcast network. I see us having our own comedy festival. I see us producing our own comedy specials, our own albums, like a Dry Bar is doing a festival like JFL. I'd like to replace JFL with Hot Breath Comedy Fest. Like podcast network, like Your Mom's House, how they have a bunch of different podcasts going on in there. I'd like one of those, all with members of the Hot Breathiverse. Really our like slogan is like cultivating the next generation of great comics. So really what Hot Breath Pro is doing in a very like strategic way is educating comics, giving them the resources and the shows and opportunities to develop their comedy a lot faster, and then giving them the platform to start showcasing that talent. So I do see Hot Breath is like a new comedy hub that is like creating its own content, creating its own comedy stars, where people like in Second City, you're like, oh, there's a Second City comedian. Oh, like Tina Fey, you heard she came from Second City. Like, I feel like that's going to be Hot Breath. People are like, oh, they're a Hot Breath comic. Or it's like, oh, a Hot Breath comedy tour. I don't even know who's going to be on it yet, but I know if it's Hot Breath, it's going to be legit. Like if you hear Second City, you're like, I don't even need to see the names to know. But I do feel like the people you see on these rosters are going to be the household names for sure. And I want to be a household name as well. I do want to say that for the record. I do want to create a platform for comics, including myself. But I do see myself having. It's tough to know what format at this point, but I do see myself having like some sort of like family friendly sitcom or mini series or something like that, where it is like a family friendly, like fun, kind of like Steve Martin, like Father of the Bride. It's like that's a movie, but it's just like just ruthlessly funny movie that everyone can watch. But that just because it's PG and not R does not mean it's any less funny. Like killer, like hilarious movies that just everyone can watch, you know. So I do see that as well. I have a character called Richard D. Sailors, putting it out there right now. That will be what I grow a mustache back for, as my character Richard D. Sailors. Just for those of you watching and listening to this later, giving you that little bit of foresight. So, and honestly though, I do see all that within 5 years.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. And you pretty much answered my next question, which was which other forms of comedy would you like to venture off into? Improv, sketch, comedy writing, acting, directing, which was acting, directing, and comedy writing. Would you like to venture off into improv and sketch too?
For sure, yeah. And I'm trained in both. Like I've taken classes in both improv and sketch. I love them. I would like to get more reps, and I've been working really specifically on stand-up, and I will continue to do that because it's a lifelong journey. You know what I mean? I've interviewed comics 20 years in who are like, I'm still figuring it out. So it's a never-ending journey, and I will not stop stand-up. But I would like to make more focus on like sketch acting, improv. I would like to start honing that muscle more. I do have some training in it and some experience, but I do want to make that a more intentional focus moving forward because it all helps each other. You know, each thing helps the other. If you're writing sketches or you're performing improv, it all just makes your stand-up stronger, which is what I just want to be the best stand-up I can be and use as many tools as possible, which are acting tools, writing tools, things like that. So I do see, becoming more like a Swiss Army knife as well. Yeah.
It's so true. It's like when I majored in broadcast journalism, that's like all the things that I took classes in, they all like was just rolled into each other, like from the journalism to the PR to the marketing to the advertising to TV to the radio, everything just formed like Voltron with me, and it's pretty neat panned out. And so what is your favorite joke a comic has ever written?
Favorite joke a comic has ever written, dude. Oh my gosh. Can I say one of my own?
Absolutely, go
I think it's one of mine, dude. Like, I'm so embarrassed to say that. That feels weird to say, but it really is a joke that like, it's just stuck with me. I do it in my special. It's a joke I wrote like 1 or 2 years into the game that just sticks and that people resonate with. And I honestly don't exactly know why beyond like the misdirect, but it's a joke that like, if I've had sets where I'm like bombing, you know, and then the more you speak, the deeper you sink into quicksand. But I do this joke and it pops me out for a second. And then the next time I breathe, I sink back in again, you know, but like this joke is like, it's been undefeated. I feel like in basically every time I've done it. So this will be the time it bombs, but it's like, I want to marry a woman with tattoos because she's comfortable with permanent mistakes. And it like, I don't know what it is. I mean, it took me like an hour to write that. Like early on in my career, I was super into like one-liners and really just understanding the structure and mechanics of a joke. So I was diving deep on one-liners and how to build misdirect and break assumptions and have a setup premise and a punchline premise and really engineer a joke from thought to an actual like structured setup punch. And that joke took me, I remember I was visiting a friend who was in law school at Georgia, and he had to go to the library to study. So I went to the library to write jokes, and I sat there for an hour working on this joke. And then I remember at the end, it was like a joke, and I told it to him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that's hilarious." And then I did it on stage, and it's like worked every time. And then it's in my special now, but it's like one of those jokes that it's like it just works. I don't know exactly the rhyme or reason beyond me figuring out a misdirect, but it's just one of those that it's just there for some reason. So I will say that one, maybe because it's so near and dear to my heart, and maybe because I couldn't think of another joke as well, because there's so many swirling around. But yeah, I think that one's up there for me.
Absolutely. And let's see here. I've kept a lot of my jokes that I started in the beginning, and they morph into other stuff. Like I polished them, but I kept them, and the clean ones are in there. So it reminds me of Texas Chainsaw, where it's smooth in the beginning, and then it gets crazy when Leatherface appears, and that's how my stand up when I mix my clean jokes in there. So, so Joel,
I'm gonna spit water all over my screen here.
so Joel, what experience would you like your audience to take with them after your set is over?
I like people to learn and laugh on my shows. Like I want people to feel something when they see my shows. Like we've all had experiences where we watch a comic for an hour and we're like, they were funny. And then you're like, I don't remember a single joke that they said. I want people to remember my jokes. I want people to come up to me after and be like, oh, that's just like my aunt, or like I went to a school like that, and like really come up to me telling me specific jokes that they enjoyed and how they resonated with them. I want people to feel something and remember the show. That's the goal at the end of the day, to make people laugh, but also learn in some way that makes them want to come back and bring their friends and family.
Absolutely. And for this episode of the Stand Up Speakeasy, we're raising funds for the International Medical Corps. And why are we raising? Why did you choose those fine folks to raise funds for this episode?
Yeah, I actually learned about them from Maj Jabrani. He did my podcast not long ago, and I knew he was a big supporter of them. When I looked into them more and all the work they're doing, especially for COVID relief, in especially like the underdeveloped countries who don't have any resources, the work they're doing, it was really inspiring. And just the work that Maz does in general, I was like, anything he supports, I want to help support. So I actually did my birthday roast. I did a birthday roast, and it was a fundraiser for International Medical Corps as well. And Maz had this whole thing for his birthday, like Run with Maz, where if you ran a certain amount of miles, they would donate a certain amount of money. So it's like, it's just seeing a great comic like him support them is what got my foot in the door and just kept them top of mind in this crazy time and all the positive work they're doing. That's something I'm big on, as well as like positivity and supportive, because whether that is in my stand-up or it is in things I affiliate myself with, or it is in the Hop Breathiverse. I mean, when I started comedy, I was confused and alone, and there wasn't anyone there to help me. And I know there's a better way for comics to just become comedians that isn't banging your head against the wall at open mics for 7 years until you're like, oh, maybe I'll try something else. Like, my goal with Hot Breath is to really teach comics everything I learned the hard way, so they don't have to. So they just focus on just getting funny and connecting with funny people that they can become professionals with together. And it all comes from a positive, supportive community, which is something I did not see existing at the time. Like I talked about looking for what's popular or what's the norm and how can I do the inverse. That's just an example of, I've seen the negativity, I've seen the competition, and there's a better way, which is a positive, supportive comedy community, because there's enough for everyone at the end of the day. There's enough laughs to go around. And the sooner people can feel that, and the sooner that becomes the norm, the better comedy is going to be for it, for sure.
Absolutely. And Joel, this is the Stand Up Speakeasy, the Roaring Twenties, a prohibition. It's the secret society of stand-up comics. And with that being said, Joel, you got to know somebody to know somebody. And so I'm trying to put Georgia on the map with this as much as I can in Atlanta and the whole country with these interviews. So with that being said, Joel, which comedians out of Atlanta would you like to see on future episodes of the Stand Up Speakeasy?
Ooh-wee. David Perdue. David Perdue for sure. Do they have to live in Atlanta or be from Atlanta?
In Atlanta, or
yeah,
both.
yeah. We'll keep it in Atlanta. I'm just thinking there's so many comics who had also like started in Atlanta and moved away. But Sam Severin. I really like Sam Severin. John Chappell for sure. And I would say Holly Ballantyne, Kinsey Snell, and Joe Pettis.
Awesome. I might need your help with spelling of their names because sometimes I reach out to the wrong people.
Yeah,
So
I'm sorry if I left anyone out. I was trying to think, but I was also trying to think of like, yeah, comics who could come on here and like really be of the standard of the stand-up speakeasy. You know what I mean? They won't embarrass the brand, if you will. But yeah, there's a lot of great comics. That's why I'm so grateful to develop and grow in Atlanta and not move away. Like from the beginning, part of my goal was to do it from Atlanta, was to create my own success from Atlanta, you know, and just to show other comics they can do it without having to move to LA or New York. So that became my goal from the beginning. In Atlanta, I could get on stage multiple times a night. So why would I move, you know? And since then, it's become like one of the top comedy scenes in the country. There's shows every night. A lot of people you're seeing on TV or in the writing rooms of popular shows are from the Atlanta scene. So it's a really a great scene to get great at comedy for sure. And there's a lot of great comics here. I see Emery saying Katie Hughes is another great one. She just released an album as well. So she's another great one to get on here as well. Yeah.
absolutely. And like PJ was talking about your how breath could be like the whole empire, and he's like, it already is, and we out here, and that Bob was like,
Hey.
the afternoon shows are called senior shows, and PJ says you put the work in for sure. So I hope all of that comes in fruition. And everyone follow Joel on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. It's scrolling on the bottom there. Donate to his Cash App, his Pen Pal, his Venmo, because I know a lot of these cities and states are locked down, and I'm trying to put money in everyone's pockets with these things. And also
Appreciate
donate to the International Medical Corps and donate to them. Their URLs, their websites on the bottom are all in the description box below too. So I made sure of that, and so you can just click copy and paste and like, subscribe, donate, and all that good stuff. So with that being said, Joel, are there any final words you'd like to give out to the audience at home and for those in commenting and all that good stuff?
No, I mean, the theme of this year and last year has really been focus on what you can control. So anyone watching, focus on what you can control. And if there aren't live shows, what you can control is how much you're writing, how helpful you're being to other comedians out there. Do you want to do a podcast? Okay. Are you working on that podcast? You know, focus on what you can control and just put in as much work as possible. If you want to connect with me on a daily basis, I'm in our Facebook group called The Writing Room. I'm in there every single day doing a joke writing club at 10 a.m. So if you want to write more jokes, join that Facebook group and I'll see you there tomorrow morning.
Awesome. I wish I woke up that early, but I'm a night owl. So.
I know it's like comedians. Oh, 10 a.m. Great. But that's like another example of me thinking most comics are like everything happens at night. What if it happened in the morning? You know, so I'm always looking for the contrast, looking for the inverse. And the theory is continue to think in that direction. Eventually that will create the wave instead of riding a wave someone else has created. We're creating a new wake for comics to ride. So that's another example of me thinking in the inverse of like, oh, 10 a.m. And there's comics on in California that wake up at 7 a.m. to do this every day. There's comics in Australia that stay up till midnight to do it every day. In the UK, it's in the middle of the afternoon and they're sneaking it in during work and things like that. So there's comics all over the world that do it. And for the late night minded people, we have also started doing Right 10 After Darks. So 10 p.m., we do another Right 10 club with members of Hot Breath Pro. So tonight, Robin Sutton Clark hosts ones on Wednesdays. Thursdays, actually, Emery hosts our Thursday Right 10 After Dark. So at 10 p.m. On Wednesdays and Thursdays, you can also do the writing club. And we're going to start doing more like Hot Breath Pro members. They're starting to produce their own Zoom shows, doing their own roasts, you know, hosting Right 10 Club. So you're going to start seeing a lot more projects come out from like Hot Breath Pro members as well.
Awesome. I need to join the club for sure. And Hot Breath first. And Emery was like, good interview, Sreth and Joel. And Joan was like, really great interview. And I'm so excited you guys love the interview. And Bob Kirk's Writer's Room at night and Right Night at 10 p.m. You all have been fantastic in the comments box. And thank you so much for being nice to us. It meant the world to us.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Joel, you have been fantastic. Thank you so much for being my guest today. And for everyone else, thank you so much again, and be safe out there. Take care of each other, and see you all on the next episode of the Stand Up Speakeasy. Be well, everyone. Awesome.